My Well is Empty. Adverse Childhood Experiences Among Pastors by David Sedlacek and René Drumm. David Sedlacek, Ph.D., is a professor and the chair of the Department of Discipleship and Lifespan Education at Andrews University, Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary, Berrien Springs, Michigan, United States. René Drumm, Ph.D., is a social scientist and researcher residing in Ottawa, Tennessee, United States. Recent research on pastoral stress has revealed startling insights into the emotional needs of pastors in the United States. In one study, a pastor shared, quote, "When it is expected from you to give, and to give, and to give, and to teach, and to be a wise man and a counselor that comes with a pastoral job description, I feel that I am kind of exhausted, and my well is empty. And I am just not excited by helping people, by preaching, by ministering anymore." End quote. This one statement offers insights into several sources of emotional challenge among pastors. For example, such emotional problems may include unending and often unrealistic expectations, as well as constant pressure to teach, provide comfort and counsel, and tackle ever-expanding pastoral functions. Besides such external pressures to perform, research reveals that pastoral training generally lacks preparation for dealing with the impact of emotions, either their own or those of the people they serve. One research participant observed, quote, "We exactly know what the Bible stands for, what we stand for, but emotionally, we don't know how to deal with it." End quote. The drive. What might be driving such emotional challenges so far that pastors lose their excitement about ministering and feel lost when it comes to handling them? Research indicates that one area to consider is trauma experienced in childhood. Adverse Childhood Experiences, ACEs, represent various types of traumas that lay the foundation for long-term negative effects on physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, and behavioral health. Several decades of research have shown a strong causal connection between ACEs and overall well-being challenges in adulthood. It means that experiencing childhood trauma may often manifest itself in negative ways in adulthood. The pervasiveness of ACEs is alarming and has far-reaching effects. Early research in the United States revealed that about half of the study samples had experienced at least one adverse event, while a quarter had suffered 2 adverse events. The researchers discovered that for each adverse experience, individuals had a corresponding increase in health challenges, such as higher levels of alcoholism, smoking, drug abuse, depression, and suicide attempts. Although pastors do not often report such extreme effects from childhood difficulties, their distress can present itself in discouragement, spiritual dryness, and burnout. Results from ACE studies suggest that, at least in part, such afflictions should be addressed by dealing with childhood trauma. In addition to their personal emotional lives, pastors are often seen as sources of help for their parishioners. Pastors, quote, "who have experienced the healing of their own emotional pain can better value mental health care and the need to address emotional pain of others." End quote. The statistics. To study ACEs in pastors, researchers have obtained data from several sources. At the beginning of the 2020 to 2021 school year at the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary, SDATS, ACE scores were collected from all incoming students. Then, at the beginning of the 2021 to 2022 school year, ACE scores were again gathered from incoming SDATS students as well as from pastors in the Allegheny East Conference, AEC, of Seventh-day Adventists. Also, researchers at the 2022 Called Pastors Family Convention gathered more data. Table 1 compares pastors at each of the 3 data collection points with the ACE scores of the general population. Table 1 compares pastors at each of the 3 data collection points with the ACE scores of the general population. Table 1. Samples of pastors with national percentages of ACEs. Question number 1. Did a parent or other adult in the household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you feel afraid that you might be physically hurt? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 40.6%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 28.9%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 37.84%. The Adventist average was 35.78%. And the national data of the general population was 33.46%. Question number 2. Did a parent or other adult in the household often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or even hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 28.4%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 20.2%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 21.62%. The Adventist average was 23.41%. And the national data of the general population was 17.5%. Question number 3. Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touched their body in a sexual way? Or try to or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal sex with you? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 26.3%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 13%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 18.92%. The Adventist average was 19.41%. And the national data of the general population was 11.31%. Question number 4. Did you often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought that you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 24.2%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 15.5%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 16.22%. The Adventist average was 18.64%. And the national data of the general population was 14.8%. Question number 5. Did you often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you, or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 11.5%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 7.7%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 5.41%. The Adventist average was 8.20%. And the national data of the general population was 9.9%. Question number 6. Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 39.6%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 30.8%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 29.73%. The Adventist average was 33.38%. And the national data of the general population was 28.24%. Question number 7. Was your mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her, or sometimes or often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or other object? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 24.2%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 10.8%. Results from the Called Pastor Family Convention 2022 were 13.51%. The Adventist average was 16.17%. And the national data of the general population was 17.76%. Question number 8. Did you ever live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or used street drugs? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 21.1%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 14.9%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 21.62%. The Adventist average was 19.21%. And the national data of the general population was 26.83%. Question number 9. Was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 29.5%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 23.1%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 16.22%. The Adventist average was 22.94%. And the national data of the general population was 16.16%. Question number 10. Did a household member go to prison? Results for students from 2020 to 2021 were 10.4%. Results for students from 2021 to 2022 were 7.7%. Results from the Called Pastors Family Convention 2022 were 0.0%. The Adventist average was 6.03%. And the national data of the general population was 8.08%. Evaluation. An examination of the data reveals that pastors experienced emotional abuse at approximately the same levels as the general population, though the rates of both physical and sexual abuse were consistently higher among pastors than the general population. Emotional neglect was higher for the pastors' samples, but the same was not true for the physical neglect. Having parents who were separated or divorced was higher for pastors than the general population, but the rates of domestic violence were generally lower. The percentage of pastors who had a parent who struggled with alcohol or drugs was lower than the general population, but the rate of parents with depression or mental illness, or who attempted suicide, was higher. Finally, those who experienced a family member in prison was generally lower for pastors. It is important to note that current statistics for the general population indicate that 67% have one or more ACEs, but among our pastor sample, this figure was 87%. This is worrisome because having at least one ACE predicts the probability of chronic physical illness, emotional challenges, and self-destructive behavior, as the literature review has demonstrated. More importantly, 12.5% of the general population have 4 or more ACEs compared to 24% of pastors. Having 4 or more ACEs leads to an exponential increase in physical, emotional, and behavioral challenges. It is the hope of the researchers that both pastors in training and in the field will begin to address their own trauma, thus growing in resilience and commitment to self-care. Addressing it, a sometimes painful process, may involve trauma resources or education and counseling. As a result, pastors will then be able to take the lead in creating trauma-informed churches that will help church members face their own ACEs. Such congregations will, in turn, become safe places for people in the surrounding communities to find healing. Church members who have been healed themselves will become vital channels to bring healing to others. For bibliographical and biblical references on this article, and for much more content for pastors and church leaders, please visit ministrymagazine.org.